Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Wishing my life away there. Welcome to Carrow Road, Paddy, as you can see at our office. And we are here to bring you the team news ahead of Norwich City's Good Friday encounter against Portsmouth. And we can bring you that team news now for you, which I will just pull up in front of me. And the good news is there's plenty of returning options on the bench for Norwich. So they have Kovacevic in goal, Gibbs, Medic, Darling and Fisher as the back four, Matson and McLean in the midfield two, Makoma, Wright and Ahmed start as the three behind Matthias Chrisgoren. So just to run through that for you again, it's Kovacevic in goal, Gibbs, Medic, Darling and Fisher as the back four, Matson and McLean in the midfield two. It's Magoma and Ahmed who does start on the left-hand side despite a pretty late dash back from Canada, and I imagine that was a pretty late decision because without betraying any confidence, we were told that he was not starting today. So that gives you an indication of maybe just how late that decision has come to start him in this game. And it is right behind Chris Goran. And that subs bench, as we mentioned, Grimshaw, Cordoba, Stacey, Kruzene, Field, Forson, Slimani, Schwartau and Torre. So returns in there for Kruzene, Stacey, obviously Cordoba, another one who's come back late from international duty, but also a return for Schwartau and Mo Torre on the bench as well. So we will put that team for you down below so you can see that in all its glory. Paddy, good afternoon. Interesting team selection from Philippe Clement, and probably inevitably there had to be changes.
Well, it certainly is changes, Connor. Hopefully you can help me. I'm down here in the bunker. En route to the Carrow, so I can't wait to get back there because it feels like it's been a long fortnight. But yeah, I mean, you did the presser yesterday, and he sort of, I've got the quotes in front of me here. He's talking up the fact that you basically almost had to wait until this morning, maybe to make some final calls, and certainly that Ali Ahmed one is a surprise because I think the sense was that him and Slimani, given they were in Canada, 3 days ago? Ridiculous, really. And he alluded to it again yesterday, didn't he, about the schedule and the pressure it's putting on championship managers, head coaches. But I guess Ali Ahmed, if you go back and, he came in into the club off the back of maybe like 1 week's off season with Vancouver, wasn't it? And then had to play a lot of minutes because of Papa Jallo getting injured and then Jurasek and one or two others in those areas. And so he's got that clearly in his DNA, that robustness to handle the load. And that's underlined again by the fact that Philippe Clement trusts him to go again today. But you look at that bench and that's really positive news. Schwartau, Kruzene, Stacey and capped for me by Mo Torre. I just thought there might be a little thought in his mind. Maybe you go straight in with Torre today. But I suppose on reflection, you've got the game at Millwall on Monday, and that is a very tight turnaround. No chances taken, clearly, with that selection today. But it feels positive. And, those, particularly, obviously, the eye is drawn to the central defenders. I looked it up there before we went live, Connor, and I don't think that's Jakub Medic's first start since December at Sheffield United. Mm-hmm. That's a hell of a long time. There's a big call on him today, obviously. And, with Harry Darling alongside him, he's been out up until recently and has got a little opportunity there with Rory McConville in and out recently with injury. But, against the Portsmouth scrapping for their lives, who we know from any time we've seen them under Mousinho, quite direct. Maybe that's the thinking today. If it's that type of game and that type of central defensive challenge, we all can go back to the Fratton Park game, and that was a grim defensive rearguard action for most of that second half, and they withstood the pressure that day. But it was very direct. It was very, bypassing midfield. If that's the case, maybe that's better suited to a Medic and a Darling. But it is a big call. There's no doubt about it. And Phil Clement has made far more right than wrong. So let's see how it all unfolds this afternoon. But I guess he teed it up, so we shouldn't be surprised. He had to be mindful of what he feels is an unfair scenario that's been put on him and fellow championship managers, and in that context he clearly feels that this is the 11 in the here and now, given all those factors, are the best suited or the best ready to go today against a team who by the very nature of where they sit now in the just above that bottom three are going to come and going to be very aggressive and play with intensity and an urgency and try and make it a very physical battle. Norwich will need to match that if they're going to continue the run they're on.
Yeah, agreed. And I guess to carry on with that, I mean, the majority of the rotation is in those centre-back positions, isn't it? To completely change that. Obviously, McConville's injury coming back from Northern Ireland and the knee injury, which is still being sort of fully assessed, but hopefully, and from what we gather, not believed to be a bad one. But the question I know that is going to be on people's minds is whether it's going to be bad enough to keep him out of that East Anglian derby in a week or so's time. We'll obviously, time will tell on that one, but hopefully he'll be back for that one. And then Cordoba, who was one of those players who's kind of had to travel back from far fetched places. He obviously played 2 games in South Africa, had a lot of minutes as well. I think it was 90 and 70 that he got, more than anyone on international duty from a Norwich perspective. So with that, coupled with a really long flight, I know there's probably not the time difference issue that there is with Ahmed and Slimani. Obviously, South Africa is only an hour or two, isn't it? Ahead of where we are, but even the travel factor, you'd imagine, comes into it. And I guess the fact is as well, those are 2 players that he would have had 2 weeks to really work with and really kind of maybe instill into them what he would like. We've just lost Paddy, who's dropped out there. Just so I was about to ask him about the back 4, which is a shame. But yes, Medic and Darling, that too, that feels like a really interesting partnership. As Paddy said there, it's the first game that Medic has started since December. Harry Darling as well. I know he's kind of started a few regularly, but it's been quite difficult for him to break what has been a really promising partnership between Cordoba and McConville. I guess the issue, or the thing you would think about, is whether, particularly the lack of Cordoba, given his pace and kind of the recovery defending, you can leave him in some really big spaces, and that as a byproduct of that allows Norwich to play over a much higher line, a significantly higher line. They squeeze the game a lot more. Whether they're going to have the same ability and potential to do that with Medic and Darling, I think remains to be seen. And then Liam Gibbs at right back again, and I think we all saw and we were all impressed with what he produced at Charlton. Paddy went down in the week and spoke to him about that role and how Philippe Clement has been kind of training him in that role over before that cameo at Charlton, but in recent weeks. And Stacey obviously coming back from a slight injury as well that he picked up at Southampton. He's back on the bench, so that is positive. And obviously Ben Krezene coming back, you would hope eventually means Callum Fisher, who I think most people on here would agree is probably the first choice in terms of where Norwich City find themselves at right back, can get back to full fitness. So a really interesting back 4. Have we got you back, Paddy? I was just speaking about the back 4 then, where you when you dipped out and Liam Gibbs and those centre backs. But Liam Gibbs at right back, you spoke to him in the week, and he said some really interesting things about Philippe Clement and kind of training for this position and this opportunity that he's gotten today at right back again, as he did in that win at Charlton.
But you were there, and but by all accounts, he acquitted himself very well, and I thought he was very candid about that. He doesn't feel comfortable in the. I think I framed the question, the defensive aspects, to get in touch tight to a winger and trying to be very good in those defensive aspects. Why would he? That's not something clearly we established there in that interview. He's not academy and now senior football, but as he also said in that answer, Philippe Clement has worked on that with him in training. They feel that that's potentially a role that he could fulfill moving forward in whatever capacity, And so why wouldn't you go with him again? I think there's a lot to like in that area for him. What he will give you is that technical comfort on the ball. He's naturally wants to. There's going to be no drop off between what he would offer and maybe a Stacey or a Fisher. But I guess that is the slight, particularly now when you put it in a back 4 that features Medic, features Darling, 2 players who haven't played for a huge amount of time together recently. So maybe that's a little bit of the roll of the dice. But for me, it's why from the start against Charlton that he doesn't look out of place in that position on the pitch. So he understands it. He's embraced it clearly, and let's see again, because there's no doubt, as has been proven in this period, when you take Mahova, you take Schlupp, you take Krezene out of the mix, Stacey's come out after the Southampton game. They are light in full, albeit unproven, and needs to develop areas of his craft in that game. Nevertheless, he can do a job in there. Then, it's another strength to Liam Gibbs'
I think
elbow, as it were. So,
there we go.
And moving forward, and he touched on this, I thought, yesterday in his presser about decisions, regarding next season and beyond, squad for next season.
Yes, indeed. I think sorry, Paddy, your connection is breaking up a little bit as you were speaking there, but I think we got the majority of that on Liam Gibbs. Let's bring you the Portsmouth team. They themselves have made 5 changes. Of course, are in pretty poor form at the moment. No win since February the 21st, 1 point from their last 6 games, and actually come into this game off the back of what was a really heavy defeat at Loftus Road, where they were beaten 6-1 there. Although I think if you look at the stats and watch the games, I think QPR scored with their first 6 shots in the box or 6 touches in the box or something, which maybe tells you everything that you need to know on that. This is how they line up. They've got Schmidt in goal. Oligvi, Dia, Poole and Devlin, their back 4, Leroux and Pack as their midfield 2, with Ali and Caballero, their wingers, with Chaplin behind Colby Bishop. That's 5 changes that John Mousinho has made to his team this afternoon. Their subs bench: Bursick, Williams, Shaughnessy, Swift, Segasic, Dozell, Blair, Anderson and Brown. And that is a really interesting one. They lost Ebu Adams, who limped out of their last game and has a slight issue that's ruled him out today. But Portsmouth, much like Norwich, have picked up significant amount of injuries in recent weeks, and they were heading into this game with 9 players out prior to this one, and those crucially in the midfield area where John Mousinho has switched it up. Notable absence, and you'll remember this is the exact same Easter fixtures as Norwich City had last year, where Portsmouth, it was that 5-3 defeat here, wasn't it, that kind of signalled the beginning of the end for Yanis Oftorup, and he was eventually sacked after that defeat to Millwall on the Easter Monday. Similar fixtures, hopefully not a similar outcome this time around. But it was Josh Murphy and Colby Bishop who caused real problems that day. Bishop starts today, Josh Murphy missing with injury. So that is how Portsmouth line up for you this afternoon. Just to answer a question that we had earlier on, I'll just have to try and find it, so bear with me. It was about the right wing. Here we go. Who we think will play in the 10 and the right wing. We're expecting Jacob Wright to be in the number 10 this afternoon and Paris Magoma to be on the right. I think by nature of, Paddy, and we've spoken about it so much in terms of around these international players, Anis Ben Slimani played 90 minutes in that game on Wednesday, which maybe is why Ahmed has come back, maybe a touch fresher as well. But he drops to the bench, as naturally that has to create some rotation and a chance for Jacob Wright, who we have seen this season in flashes show some really promising moments as a number 10 in that attacking midfield position behind the striker.
Notably the Southampton game at Carrow Road, where he was good with Makama that day, very good, and felt he dipped a little bit thereafter when he was both tried in the 10 and then he dropped him back in the 6-8 roles. I don't think he really grasped his opportunity, and Philip Clement arrived at the same conclusion because he's been out of the side pretty much since Sam Field came in in the 10, and then obviously Palamatsa now comes back in, and he is a clear staple in that 11 when fit. So difficult for him, I'm sure, but might be very clever move today. Might be very clever. If Clement's looked at Portsmouth, looked at how they're going to probably go about it, feels there might be opportunities for the type of attributes that Jacob Wright would bring in the 10, then it might not be the worst call, because you would think that's a young player who would feel probably frustrated at the lack of minutes he's had. And there was a point there about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we asked him about Jacob Wright, and I think Philippe was more or less saying, look, I love the player. I like a lot of what he's about. He's a very intelligent boy. He picks things up very, in terms of his attitude in training, willingness to learn, all those attributes, but he clearly isn't that more advanced than the players I've already referenced in terms of those positions in midfield. So it's difficult for a young player, particularly one who only shining light in a downward spiral in terms of results that ultimately led to Torp coming out the club, and Jack Wiltshire coming in terms of interim. But Jacob Wright looked at the end of that season like, okay, this was a guy who maybe just on the cusp of being a starter, a regular player, and it hasn't happened for him. And that's the journey these young players go on. They're trying to cross the divide from development environment into a first team, but not just that, but then to be regular starters. You could argue Oscar Schwartau had navigated that path very well this season under successive managers until injury took him out of the team, and good to see him back in the squad today. And that's the challenge. Grab it, make the most of it, give Philippe Clement a nice problem to have going into Millwall on Monday, and then small matter of the derby a week tomorrow.
Yeah, it is. It is dawning on us, isn't it, that East Anglian derby here at Carrow Road, and I think there's a lot of people already looking ahead to that. One thing is for sure, Philippe Clement definitely won't be, and there's already 2 difficult games before that. Today against Portsmouth, and then obviously Monday against Millwall, in that game that is currently ongoing actually at the Riverside, which is really significant at the top of the Championship. Currently 1-1, which would, you have to say, probably be the best case scenario for Ipswich Town, who would have 2 games in hand on both of them and be, just 3 points behind Middlesbrough in part of that. They, of course, don't play today because they were due to play Southampton, who are in FA Cup duty this weekend in the quarter-final against Arsenal. So, Norwich have an opportunity maybe to have a say in that automatic promotion race, given they go to Millwall, currently 1-1 at the Riverside there as well. Paddy, before we come to score predictions, and again, I recognise we're battling the Wi-Fi in our bunker, which is testing at the most times. The bench, lots of returning players on there. We mentioned them right at the start. Stacey, Crizene, Toure as well. Obviously, Schwartau, who actually on the team sheet that I've been given, which maybe indicates how late a decision this was, actually has Oscar Schwartau as a starter, which I have to say is what we were expecting. You might be able just to see that there. So that maybe shows how late it was. We might have to clear that up, actually. That it is definitely Ali Ahmed starting and not Oscar Schwartau, because I've got Oscar Schwartau's name on the team sheet here. But that's by the by. Oscar Schwartau, another returnee, I was going to say. There's some real options on that bench to bring into this game late on, which is something, a luxury really, that Philippe Clement hasn't had for pretty much the majority of his Norwich City tenure so far, which makes it all the more impressive just what has been achieved under him, particularly since the start of 2026.
Yeah, we better just double check that is the case then, Connor. If you're getting a team sheet sent around with Schwartau on there, their graphic clearly states our understanding was it was Schwartau. So
correct.
Who is Schwartau or Ahmed? Schwartau.
Well, I've got Schwartau on my team sheet. I will check that now with the relevant people, and I will come back.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because they definitely didn't tweet out Schwartau, did they, in that graphic? So for me, the Mo Toure situation in terms of, I thought he was probably unfortunate. Well, maybe not unfortunate, but it wouldn't have surprised me if he had started, as I said earlier. Because I just think, we're led to believe he's been training for a reasonable number of days, and it's been tough that he hasn't been able to get the goals to go with those series of starts in a position I'm sure he would feel that certainly when he came in last summer was maybe where he was going to play in this squad. So, and he's been a little bit unlucky. I'm trying to think now. There was the Preston game and Sheffield United game. We both had those headers cleared off the line inside the 6-yard box. So it might have been a different narrative. But it wouldn't have surprised me, if I'm honest, if it had been Mo Toure today starting, just because in contrast to Chris Gordon, he went into an unbelievable seam of goal-scoring form immediately after taking his position in the club in January. So, but, maybe that's, again, a precautionary measure, and there's a player with a muscular injury who, if he is to do that, then, I would imagine in pretty short order it will be a shuffle at the top end of the pitch, and Chris Gordon will come out, Toure will go in, and of course he's got a major incentive now with Australia and World Cup matters at the end of this season now, in not all that many games left in terms of league games for his club. So he will be very keen to sharpen up and get himself in for him. So, for me...
I'll jump in here. He's just to confirm, he's definitely Oscar Schwartau starting this afternoon. So Oscar Schwartau starts on the right for Norwich, on the left for Norwich. Ali Ahmed on the bench, as we initially expected. So just to absolutely confirm, it is Oscar Schwartau that starts for Norwich. Ali Ahmed is on the bench. So the team sheet I have in front of me is correct on that front. So just to run through that 11 for you again to make it clear, it's Kovacevic in goal, Gibbs, Medic, Darling, Fisher, Matson, McLean, Magoma on the right, Schwartau on the left with Jacob Wright behind Matthias Chris-Goran. So yeah, just sorry to interject, Pad, but yeah, just to confirm, it is Oscar Schwartau starting in that Norwich City.
Good, yeah. No, I'd done, Connor. No, over to you, mate. Yeah, no, I'd done. Yeah.
Cool, no worries. Yeah, so that is how Norwich City line up this afternoon. It is definitely, as I said, Oscar Schwartau starting, Ali Ahmed on the bench. So we will update all of the relevant things, including that banner that is scrolling across the screen. But just to bring that to you and to confirm again, Oscar Schwartau in for Norwich. Paddy, how do you see this game going then from a Norwich perspective? It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you look at it and maybe the expectation is that because Norwich are in a position where they are in really good form, Portsmouth are not, that maybe this is one that is going to go in their favour and is one that is going to suit them. But it's we know what the Championship is like. When you think you've cracked it, when you think there is an opportunity ahead of you, it has a nasty habit of catching you on the chin sometimes. So this is going to be a tough game. Portsmouth scrapping for their life. How do you see it going this afternoon?
Well, I was a bit surprised actually watching your press for February because they're in dire need of wins now, just to keep the three below them as it stands. You know, they're right on the cut line now. I think they're a point clear of Leicester, but I'm not sure if Leicester got a game in hand. So I don't think this is going to be an easy affair, and all of that level of change doesn't aid Norwich's chances, I don't think, understandable though it is. So I'm not envisaging a particularly pleasing or entertaining game of football. But then if Norwich get the result, then who cares? But I think it could be quite an attritional type of game. I think Portsmouth will try and make it that and do what they can, fair play, to try and get a result. And their need is a very urgent need. Norwich is less so, although, you know, we still can't put a red line through playoffs, I guess. But if it is going to be that type of talk continuing, then it'd have to be a win today and probably maybe the same at Millwall. So yeah, 2-1 for me, I think. But I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if Portsmouth get a draw in today, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I could certainly see a draw in the situation, particularly given the context of where Norwich are at and their rotation in the side. I'm with you though. I think Norwich will edge it. I'm going to go a goal more than you did though. I'm going to go 3-1 for Norwich, just to roll them into hopefully then what will be a really interesting week next week, where they face two teams in the hunt for automatic promotion. Millwall on Easter Monday, and then the small matter of that East Anglian derby next Saturday as well. That is just about it. Just to run through that Norwich 11 for you again, because it's been one of the more topsy-turvy team news videos that we've done. It is Kovacevic in goal, Gibbs, Medic, Darling and Fisher at the back four, Matson and McLean, the midfield two, Magoma on the right, Schwartau definitely on the left, with Jacob Wright behind Matthias Chris-Goran at the bench, Grimshaw, Stacey, Krezene, Forson, Slimani, Ahmed, Field, Cordova and Torre. Plenty of coverage, analysis and reaction to this afternoon's game over at pinken.com. You can check that out. It'll be Paddy speaking to Philippe Clement later, and hopefully it is an afternoon where we see some more of those excellent scenes. And the Easter schedule starts now. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you again soon. See you later.